The silence inside the restaurant felt expensive. Not quiet. Expensive. Every sound carried weight, the soft clink of crystal glasses, the smooth murmur of low conversations, the muted footsteps of waiters gliding across polished black floors like ghosts trained never to disturb the rich. Precious became painfully aware of every movement she made. The way she adjusted the sleeves of her cream-colored blouse. The way her fingers tightened around her phone beneath the table. The way people looked at her. Not openly. That somehow made it worse. Tiny glances. Quick flickers of curiosity. A plus-sized black woman sitting alone in one of the most elite private restaurants in Los Angeles looked like a mistake nobody wanted to acknowledge out loud. Her cousin Vanessa had practically forced her into coming. Just dinner, she had said over the phone earlier that afternoon. A client's associate needs a date for an event. One night. Free food. Maybe rich people gossip. Stop overthinking. Precious should have trusted her instincts. Nothing about this place felt normal. The restaurant overlooked the city's skyline from the top floor of a towering hotel downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed glittering lights beneath the dark evening sky. Everything smelled faintly of polished wood, wine, and money. Real money. Not social media money. Not flashy influencer money. Old, dangerous money. The kind that made people whisper instead of stare. Precious checked the time again. 10 minutes late. Her stomach twisted. Maybe he wasn't coming. Honestly, she hoped he wasn't. She was already planning how quickly she could disappear without embarrassing herself when the atmosphere in the room shifted. Not loudly. Silently. Like pressure changing before a storm. Several conversations paused. A waiter immediately stepped aside. Even the hostess straightened unconsciously. Precious looked up. And saw him. He moved through the restaurant without rushing, yet somehow everyone parted for him automatically. Tall. Broad shoulders. Charcoal black suit tailored so perfectly it looked sculpted onto him. His dark hair was pushed neatly back from his forehead, exposing sharp cheekbones and cold, unreadable eyes that swept across the room once before landing directly on her. Not curious. Not interested. Assessing. Precious suddenly felt underdressed. Too loud. Too visible. He stopped at the table. For a second, he simply looked at her. That look alone made heat crawl up her neck. Not because it was flirtatious. Because it wasn't. It felt clinical. Like he was trying to understand why she existed in front of him. Then he sat down across from her. You're precious. His voice was calm and deep, smooth enough to almost hide how cold it was. She cleared her throat. And you're apparently terrible at punctuality. She tried to smile after saying it. He didn't. His eyes stayed fixed on her face. Studying. Calculating. The silence stretched long enough to become painful. Precious shifted slightly in her seat. I'm guessing Vanessa didn't tell you much about me. No, he said flatly. She didn't. Something about the answer made her chest tighten. A waiter appeared beside the table immediately. Mr. Kong. The waiter lowered his head slightly while pouring water into crystal glasses. Mr. Kang never looked at him. His attention remained entirely on Precious. Do you know who I am? He asked. Vanessa said you work in finance. For the first time, something faint moved behind his eyes. Not amusement. Something darker. You believe that? Precious frowned slightly. Shouldn't I? Another long silence. Then he leaned back slightly in his chair, gaze hardening. This was arranged by Han Seo-jin. The name meant nothing to her. She blinked. Okay. He enjoys humiliation. The words landed strangely. Precious's stomach tightened. Mr. Kang's expression never changed. He sends messages through people. Now the embarrassment started creeping in. Slowly. Burning. I don't understand what you're saying. His eyes moved over her carefully styled braids, her full figure, the inexpensive blouse she suddenly regretted wearing. Then back to her face. You were selected very carefully. The humiliation hit instantly. Hard. Like ice water dumped directly over her head. Oh. She understood now. This wasn't a date. She wasn't here because somebody thought they might connect. She was here because somebody wanted to insult him. And her existence beside him was apparently the insult. The realization hollowed her stomach. For a moment, she couldn't even speak. Mr. Kang finally reached into his jacket calmly and removed several crisp $100 bills. He placed them neatly on the table between them. "For your time," he said. Precious stared at the money. Every insecurity she had spent years burying clawed violently back to life. Too dark. Too big. Too ordinary. Not the kind of woman men like him would ever willingly be seen beside. Her throat burned, but she refused to let him see it. Slowly, she pushed the money back toward him. "I didn't come here to get paid." His face remained unreadable. "That changes nothing." The words sliced deeper than she expected. Precious stood quickly before the tears gathering in her eyes could betray her. The chair scraped softly against the floor. For the first time, several nearby people openly stared. She hated that. Hated him for causing it. "Enjoy your dinner," she whispered tightly. Then she turned and walked away as fast as she could without running. She only made it 3 steps. Before we go any further, if you're already hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you do not want to miss where this goes. Now back to Precious. The explosion shattered the entire wall of glass behind the restaurant. Screams erupted instantly. Glass sprayed through the air like knives. Precious froze in pure shock. Before she could even turn around fully, something slammed hard into her waist. Strong arms yanked her violently downward. A body covered hers. The overturned table crashed beside them. More screaming. Then sharp popping sounds echoed through the restaurant. Gunshots. Muted. Silenced. Professional. Precious's heartbeat stopped. "Stay down." Mr. King's voice growled directly beside her ear. Cold. Controlled. Deadly calm. Another burst of gunfire ripped across the room. People screamed louder. A chandelier shattered somewhere behind them. Precious squeezed her eyes shut as terror locked her entire body. She could feel him above her. Solid. Steady. Protecting her. Not panicking. Working. A metallic click sounded near her head. A gun. He had a gun. Of course he had a gun. "Listen carefully," he said sharply. His hand gripped the back of her neck firmly, forcing her attention onto him. His eyes no longer looked cold. They looked lethal. "On my signal, you run to the kitchen. You do not stop. You do not look back. Understand?" Precious could barely breathe, but she nodded. Another gunshot exploded nearby. Mr. Kong immediately shifted again, shielding her body completely with his own. And for the first time since meeting him, she saw fear. Not for himself. For her. Precious ran. The kitchen doors slammed open as she stumbled through them, nearly crashing into a terrified waiter carrying a tray of shattered glasses. People were screaming everywhere. Chefs ducked behind metal counters. Someone cried hysterically near the freezer doors. Another gunshot echoed from the dining hall. Closer this time. Precious's lungs burned as panic dragged her forward through the chaos. She barely noticed the employees rushing past her toward the back exit. All she could hear was him. "Do not stop." She burst through the alley exit into freezing night air. The city behind the restaurant screamed with sirens already approaching in the distance. Precious bent forward sharply, hands braced against her knees as her body shook violently. She was alive. Alive. The realization barely settled before headlights flooded the alley. A black sedan screeched around the corner hard enough to spray dirty rainwater across the pavement. The back door flew open instantly. Several men in black suits stepped out first. Not security guards. Soldiers. Their movements were too coordinated. Too alert. Then he appeared behind them. Mr. Kong emerged from the back entrance of the restaurant with terrifying calm, one hand holding a pistol low against his thigh. Not a single trace of panic showed on his face. His suit was dusted with glass fragments. A thin streak of blood marked the side of his jaw. Not his blood. His eyes locked onto Precious immediately. And stayed there. One of the suited men spoke urgently in Korean. Mr. Kong ignored him completely. Instead, he walked straight toward her. Precious's pulse spiked again. Something about him now felt different. Inside the restaurant he had been cold. Controlled. Distant. But now he looked dangerous. Not socially powerful. Actually dangerous. His presence swallowed the alley. "You're coming with me." Not a request. Precious stepped backward instinctively. "What?" "No. The attackers saw you." "I don't care, I'm going home." "That is no longer possible." His voice remained low and calm, which somehow made it worse. Precious stared at him in disbelief. You don't get to decide that. For the first time, irritation flickered across his face. You were sitting with me when assassins opened fire into a private restaurant. The word assassins made her stomach twist violently. You think this ends tonight? I don't even know you. No, he agreed coldly. You do not. Another black SUV suddenly sped into the alley. Mr. Kang's men reacted instantly, hands reaching inside their jackets. The SUV slowed. One of the men inside lowered the tinted window slightly before speaking rapidly in Korean. Mr. Kang's expression darkened further. Then he looked back at Precious. And for the first time since meeting him, she noticed exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Something deeper. Like a man permanently braced for disaster. Get in the car, he said quietly. Precious shook her head immediately. No. His jaw tightened. You are currently attached to a war you do not understand. I didn't ask for that. I know. That answer caught her off guard. There was no cruelty in it. No mockery. Only blunt truth. Rain started falling lightly into the alley. Cold droplets collected along the sharp line of his jaw. Precious realized his gun was still in his hand. Not trembling. Not uncertain. Steady. Like this was normal for him. Like violence was routine. Fear crawled slowly up her spine. Who is this man? Before she could speak again, another sharp popping sound echoed from somewhere near the front of the building. One of the guards swore under his breath. Mr. Kong moved instantly. His hand gripped Precious's wrist firmly. Move. He pulled her toward the sedan. Wait. She stumbled as he opened the back door and guided her inside with controlled force. Not rough enough to hurt. Strong enough to make resistance useless. The door slammed shut behind her. Locks clicked immediately. Precious spun toward the window just as he entered beside her. The car accelerated hard down the alley. Fast. Too fast. Her breathing became uneven again. What is happening? Nobody answered. The suited men in front remained silent. Rain streaked across the tinted windows while Los Angeles lights blurred outside. Mr. Kang sat beside her without moving. Without speaking. His attention remained fixed outside the vehicle. Alert. Watching everything. Precious studied him carefully now that she finally could. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. Sharp cheekbones. Dark eyes that never seemed to soften. Perfect posture despite the chaos. And there was something else. A heaviness. Like he carried invisible weight every second he existed. The realization unsettled her. Because men like him weren't supposed to look tired. After several long minutes, she finally found her voice again. Who are you really? Silence. Then, Kong Jinwoo. The name meant nothing to her. But the reaction from the driver did. The man visibly stiffened hearing it spoken aloud. Precious noticed. Jinwoo noticed her noticing. His gaze shifted toward her slowly. Observant. Calculating. Like he was constantly evaluating threats. You should sleep if you can, he said. Precious stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Sleep. Your body is in shock. You think I can sleep after tonight? A pause. Then quietly. No. The honesty in that single word hit harder than expected. For a brief moment, something dangerous cracked beneath his cold exterior. Not softness. Not warmth. Loneliness. Then it disappeared. Just as quickly as it came. And suddenly Precious understood something instinctively. This was a man who trusted nobody. Not even himself. 20 minutes later, the sedan disappeared beneath a private underground entrance guarded by armed security. Actual armed security. Men wearing black tactical uniforms stepped aside immediately as the gates opened. Precious's stomach tightened again. The car stopped inside a private elevator bay. One of the suited men opened her door. Mississippi. She hesitated before stepping out slowly. The underground garage looked more secure than some government buildings. Cameras tracked every angle. More guards stood near reinforced steel doors. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke casually. Everyone seemed permanently alert. Precious turned toward Jinwoo. Where are we? My residence. That doesn't answer the question. He stepped into the elevator without looking back. Get in. Precious stayed where she was. No. The elevator doors remained open. One of the guards shifted awkwardly beside her. Jinwoo finally looked at her fully again. Exhaustion lingered beneath his cold expression now. Not visible enough for most people to notice. But she noticed. You are not safe outside. And I'm safe with you? The question hung heavily in the air. For the first time, Jinwoo hesitated slightly before answering. Yes. The confidence in his voice should have reassured her. Instead, it terrified her. Because he sounded absolutely certain. Precious crossed her arms tightly. You kidnapped me. No, he corrected calmly. I prevented a second assassination attempt. That's not better. A faint flicker crossed one guard's face nearby. Almost amusement. It vanished instantly when Jinwoo glanced his direction. The elevator remained open. Waiting. Finally, Precious stepped inside reluctantly. The doors closed immediately. Silence swallowed them whole as the elevator climbed. Higher. 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 The private penthouse occupied the entire top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Precious froze slightly. The place didn't look lived in. It looked controlled. Everything was black, gray, glass, and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glowing city skyline beneath them. Minimal furniture. No photographs. No personal decorations. No warmth. It felt less like a home and more like a fortress pretending to be one. Jinwoo removed his suit jacket slowly. Your room is down the hall. Precious stared at him. My room? You'll stay here temporarily. No. He looked at her again. Cold. Patient. Like someone used to giving orders people obeyed. You do not understand the situation. And you don't understand boundaries. Her voice echoed slightly through the massive penthouse. One of the guards near the elevator shifted uncomfortably. Jinwoo remained calm. Too calm. The men tonight saw your face. And whose fault is that? Something hardened instantly in his expression. There are people currently searching for everyone connected to me. Then maybe I shouldn't be connected to you. You already are. That answer silenced her. Not because it reassured her. Because it sounded final. Like a fact that could no longer be changed. Precious looked away first. Her chest felt tight again. Everything about tonight had happened too fast. Hours ago, she'd been organizing library archives while eating vending machine chips during her break. Now she was standing inside a billionaire gangster's penthouse after surviving a shootout. None of this felt real. Jinwoo loosened the top button of his dress shirt slightly. The small gesture somehow made him look more dangerous instead of less. Tired. But dangerous. Food will be brought shortly, he said. You should rest. Precious laughed once bitterly. Rest? His dark eyes settled on her again carefully. You're in shock. You keep saying that like it fixes anything. Silence. Then quietly. No, it doesn't. That caught her off guard. Something about the answer sounded honest. Not manipulative. Not rehearsed. Just tired. A strange tension settled between them. Precious studied him more carefully now. Up close, the perfection started cracking slightly. The shadows beneath his eyes. The stiffness in his shoulders. The constant awareness in his posture. Even standing still, he looked prepared for violence. Like his body no longer knew how to relax. You really expected people to try killing you tonight? She asked softly. Jinwoo walked toward the windows overlooking the city. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then, I expected eventually. The answer chilled her. Not because of what he said. Because of how normal it sounded to him. Precious watched his reflection in the glass. Tall. Still. Alone. For the first time since meeting him. He didn't look powerful. He looked exhausted. The penthouse became quieter at night. Not peaceful. Just quieter. The city lights beyond the massive windows never turned off, glowing endlessly beneath the dark sky like another universe entirely. Sometimes Precious would stand there for long stretches, arms folded tightly around herself, watching traffic move far below while trying to convince herself this was temporary. 3 days. She had been trapped there for 3 days. 3 days of guarded elevators. Silent men in black suits. Locked doors. And Kong Jinwoo disappearing for hours at a time before returning looking colder each night. She learned his routines without meaning to. He barely ate. Never relaxed. Never smiled. And apparently, never slept. At least not normally. The first night she noticed it, she'd woken around 3 a.m. thirsty and wandered carefully toward the kitchen. The penthouse had been dark except for the city lights spilling through the windows. Jinwoo stood near the glass in a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, phone pressed against his ear while speaking quietly in Korean. His voice sounded low, sharp, dangerous, but exhausted underneath it. Precious had frozen halfway down the hallway before he slowly turned his head toward her. He noticed everything. Always. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then he ended the call immediately. You should be asleep. She crossed her arms defensively. You should mind your business. A strange silence followed. Not hostile. Just tense. Jinwoo looked at the glass of water in her hand. Then at her face. You read when you're anxious. Precious blinked. What? His eyes shifted toward the book tucked beneath her arm. She hadn't even realized she was carrying it. You carry the same book every night, he said calmly. But you never pass the same chapter. Heat crept into her face instantly. He'd noticed that? Embarrassingly enough, he was right. She reread pages whenever her anxiety spiraled. It calmed her. Precious tightened her grip slightly on the book. You observe people too much. It keeps them alive. The answer came so naturally it unsettled her. Like vigilance was instinct to him now. Like relaxing would get him killed. Jinwoo walked past her toward the kitchen. The soft scent of cedar and expensive cologne lingered briefly in the air after him. Try sleeping tonight, he said quietly. Precious stared after him. You first. For the first time. She thought she saw the faintest almost smile near the corner of his mouth. Gone before she could be sure it existed. The next evening, he came home bleeding. Precious realized something was wrong the second the elevator doors opened. One of his men was supporting him slightly. Jinwoo immediately pulled away from the assistants with visible irritation. It's nothing. His white dress shirt said otherwise. Blood stained the fabric along his side. Not a small amount. Precious stood instantly from the couch. Oh my God. Jinwoo barely looked at her. Go back to your room. No. One of the guards exchanged an uncomfortable glance with another. Jinwoo walked toward the kitchen counter slowly, jaw tight. It's handled. It's bleeding through your shirt. I said it's handled. The sharpness in his voice echoed through the penthouse. Precious should have backed off. Instead, she stepped closer. Sit down. That got everyone's attention. Even the guards looked shocked she'd spoken to him that way. Jinwoo stared at her coldly. Precious's heartbeat sped up. But she didn't move. You're injured, she said firmly. And clearly nobody around here knows how to argue with you, so congratulations, now you have me. Silence. Heavy silence. Then, surprisingly, one of the guards hid a cough that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Jinwoo shot him a deadly look instantly. The man straightened immediately. Finally, after several long seconds, Jinwoo sat down slowly on the couch. Not because she ordered him to. Because he was tired enough not to fight her. Precious grabbed the first aid kit one of the guards silently handed her. When she carefully unbuttoned the side of his blood-stained shirt, her breath caught slightly. Scars. More than she expected. Some thin. Some deep. One long pale mark stretched across his ribs like a memory carved directly into skin. This wasn't a businessman's body. This was someone who had survived violence repeatedly. Jinwoo noticed her staring. His voice lowered slightly. You can stop looking. Precious swallowed hard. You've been stabbed before. Several times. The casualness of the answer disturbed her deeply. She cleaned the knife wound carefully while he sat perfectly still. No flinching. No complaint. Just silent observation. The penthouse remained so quiet she could hear both their breathing. Precious focused carefully on wrapping the bandage. Her fingers brushed lightly against his skin several times accidentally. Warm skin. Hard muscle. Each touch felt strangely intimate despite the tension between them. Jinwoo never looked away from her face once. Not once. Finally, she finished wrapping the injury neatly. There. He glanced down briefly at the clean bandage. Then back at her. You've done this before. My mom worked double shifts growing up, Precious said softly while packing the supplies away. You learn basic medical stuff fast when hospitals are expensive. Something unreadable flickered across his face. Not pity. Something quieter. Understanding maybe. Precious stood slowly. But before she could step away, her fingers brushed absent-mindedly across one older scar near his shoulder. Jinwoo went completely still. The reaction was immediate. Not anger. Memory. Pain. Real pain. Precious pulled her hand back quickly. Sorry. A long silence followed. Then quietly. That one nearly killed me. Okay, I need to stop here for a second, because the comment section needs to weigh in. Do you think Jinwoo is capable of actually loving someone after everything he has been through? His voice sounded distant suddenly, like he wasn't really in the room anymore. Precious looked at him carefully. You survived. Jinwoo's eyes lifted toward hers slowly. For a second, something vulnerable cracked through the armor again. Small. Dangerous. She didn't. The words hit heavily between them. Precious didn't ask who he meant. Instinct told her not to. Some wounds were still bleeding internally. Jinwoo looked away first. But later that night, long after she returned to her room, he found himself remembering something absurdly small. Not her face. Not her body. Not even her voice. The memory that stayed with him was how gently she touched his scars, like she didn't think he was a monster for having them. Precious couldn't sleep. Again. Rain rolled softly against the penthouse windows while the city below shimmered beneath midnight lights, but her mind refused to quiet down. Too much had changed too fast. The attack. The guns. The scars on Jinwoo's body. And worst of all, the growing feeling that she still didn't fully understand why any of this had happened to her. She sat curled into the corner of the massive couch with a book open in her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in nearly 20 minutes. Voices drifted faintly from the hallway. Male voices. Korean. Sharp. Tense. Precious normally tried not to listen. Tonight something about the tone made her glance toward the partially open office door near the end of the hallway. Jinwoo stood inside speaking with 3 of his men. One of them she recognized immediately. The younger guard. The one who occasionally looked at her with something almost resembling kindness. Tonight he looked uncomfortable. Jinwoo stood near the desk, sleeves rolled to his forearms again, face carved from stone while one of the men spoke rapidly. Then Precious heard English. Seo Jin planned it perfectly. Jinwoo said nothing. The younger guard hesitated before continuing carefully. He knew exactly what reaction the board members would have. Precious frowned slightly. What reaction? Another man muttered darkly. A Korean heir walks into a luxury restaurant with a fat black librarian? Half the city would have laughed by morning. The room went silent instantly. Precious stopped breathing. The guard realized too late what he had said. Jinwoo's face changed immediately. Not outwardly dramatic. Worse. Cold in a way that felt lethal. The younger guard swallowed hard. I didn't mean. You spoke carelessly. Jinwoo's voice came dangerously soft. Precious's stomach twisted violently. The words echoed through her head over and over. Fat black librarian. Laughed by morning. Suddenly everything clicked together completely. Not just the insult. The precision of it. She hadn't been chosen randomly. Every detail about her had been selected deliberately. Her body. Her skin. Her class. Her existence beside him was supposed to humiliate him publicly. Like she was something shameful. Something ridiculous. A joke powerful men could laugh about over whiskey. The nausea hit so suddenly she stood from the couch too fast. The movement caught attention immediately. All 3 men turned. The younger guard looked horrified. Precious stared directly at Jinwoo. And saw it. The truth. He already knew. Of course he knew. He had understood the moment he sat down across from her in that restaurant. That was why he looked at her like that. Not attraction. Assessment. Recognition. She felt humiliated all over again. Raw. Burning. Precious. Don't. Her voice cracked sharply enough to silence him. She hated that. Hated herself for sounding hurt. But the pain exploded too violently to hide now. You knew. Jinwoo remained still. That silence was answer enough. Precious laughed once bitterly, tears already threatening her eyes. Oh my God. The younger guard stepped forward slightly. Miss Davis, I swear nobody here. Enough. Jinwoo's command cut through the room instantly. Everyone went silent. Precious stared at him with disbelief burning across her face. They picked me because they thought I'd embarrass you. No response. That hurt worst of all. You sat there looking at me like I was trash because you already understood the joke. His jaw tightened. But still. Nothing. Precious felt her chest tightening painfully. Her entire life suddenly replayed itself at once. Every room where prettier women got noticed first. Every man who treated her like the safe option instead of the desired one. Every moment she felt invisible standing beside people wealthier, thinner, lighter, better. And somehow this felt bigger than all of it. Because powerful people had turned those insecurities into strategy. Jinwoo finally spoke. In my world, cruelty is strategy. The words landed like a slap. Cold. Brutal. Final. Precious stared at him in disbelief. You really believe that? It is reality. No, she snapped sharply. That's cowardice dressed up as intelligence. One of the guards visibly tensed. Nobody spoke to Kong Jinwoo like that. But Precious didn't care anymore. Her eyes burned too much. You know what the worst part is? She whispered. You looked at me and immediately agreed with them. For the first time. Actual emotion cracked across his face. Brief. Sharp. Anger maybe. Not at her. At himself. But it vanished almost instantly behind the cold mask again. Precious wiped her eyes furiously before the tears could fall. I want to be alone. Then she walked away quickly toward her room before anyone could stop her. The penthouse fell silent after the bedroom door slammed shut. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Jinwoo stood completely still near the desk. The younger guard looked miserable. I apologize, sir. Jinwoo slowly turned toward him. The room temperature seemed to drop instantly. What exactly, Jinwoo asked quietly, did you find amusing? The guard paled. Sir, I didn't. You repeated their insult comfortably. It was not my intention to disrespect her. Wrong answer. Jinwoo crossed the room so fast the guard barely reacted before being slammed violently against the wall. The other men froze instantly. Jinwoo's hand gripped the younger man's throat hard enough to silence him immediately. His voice remained terrifyingly calm. You will never speak about her that way again. The guard nodded frantically. Jinwoo released him sharply. The man stumbled hard trying to breathe. No one else dared move. Jinwoo adjusted the cuffs of his shirt slowly afterward like nothing happened. But his face had gone darker than any of them had ever seen. Because the truth unsettled him too. Not the cruelty. He understood cruelty perfectly. What unsettled him was how angry he became hearing someone else reduce her to the same insult he once accepted himself. The underground parking garage echoed with silence. Cold. Concrete. Empty except for the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the soft engine noise of the black SUV rolling slowly between pillars. Precious sat in the back seat beside Jinwoo, arms folded tightly across herself while rainwater streaked faintly across the tinted windows. She hated leaving the penthouse. Not because she liked it there. Because outside meant danger now. Everywhere. Jinwoo noticed her watching the garage nervously. Breathe normally. Precious looked at him sharply. I am breathing normally. No, he said calmly. You are preparing for something bad to happen. That's because something bad usually does happen when I'm around you. A faint almost smirk touched the corner of his mouth briefly before disappearing. The SUV continued deeper underground. 2 security vehicles followed behind them. Standard procedure apparently. Nothing about Jinwoo's life happened casually. Precious glanced toward him again. He wore another dark suit tonight, perfectly tailored as always, but the fresh bandage beneath the collar of his shirt reminded her he wasn't untouchable. Just dangerous. There was a difference. You still haven't told me where we're going, she muttered. A safer location. That sounds fake. It is. She blinked. Jinwoo looked toward the windshield calmly. There is no truly safe location anymore. The honesty unsettled her again. Then suddenly, his posture changed. Tiny. Almost invisible. But she noticed immediately now. His shoulders stiffened slightly. His eyes sharpened toward the concrete ramp ahead. Danger. The SUV slowed. Too fast. Jinwoo's voice dropped instantly. Lock the doors. The driver reacted immediately. Precious's pulse spiked. What happened? Nobody answered. Then headlights exploded on ahead of them. 2 black vehicles screeched sideways across the garage exit, blocking the path completely. The SUV stopped hard. Everything happened at once. Gunfire erupted violently through the garage. The windshield shattered instantly. The driver jerked sideways as blood sprayed across the dashboard. Precious screamed. Jinwoo grabbed her violently downward before another burst of bullets tore through the windows above them. Down. Glass rained everywhere. The bodyguard in the front passenger seat fired back immediately through the shattered windshield while alarms started echoing across the garage. Precious's entire body shook uncontrollably against the floor. More gunfire. Louder. Closer. The SUV rocked slightly as bullets slammed into metal. Jinwoo remained terrifyingly calm beside her. His pistol moved with precise efficiency while he fired through the broken side window. Not random shots. Controlled. Deadly. Someone outside screamed. Then silence. Then more gunfire. They boxed us in, one of the guards shouted. Jinwoo reloaded smoothly. How many? 6 minimum. Precious could barely process anything happening around her. Smoke filled the vehicle. The smell of blood and gunpowder burned her lungs. Jinwoo suddenly grabbed the back of the front seat hard and leaned toward her. Listen carefully. His voice cut through the chaos instantly. There's an emergency fire suppression release in the trunk compartment. Precious stared at him. What? When I say move, you pull it. Bullets exploded against the SUV again. The rear window shattered violently inward. Jinwoo immediately shielded her with his body while returning fire one-handed. How am I supposed to find it? Behind the panel beside you. Another gunshot cracked nearby. One of the guards cursed loudly outside. Jinwoo's eyes locked onto hers. Focused. Steady. Trusting her. You can do it. The words hit strangely hard. Nobody had ever sounded that certain about her before. Precious scrambled toward the back compartment with shaking hands. Her fingers fumbled desperately along the leather side panel until... Metal. A small emergency ring. I found it. Good. Jinwoo fired twice more through the window. Then, pull it now. Precious yanked the ring hard. Instantly, thick white chemical foam exploded outward from vents across the garage ceiling. The entire underground level disappeared into blinding white chaos within seconds. Attackers started shouting. Visibility vanished completely. Jinwoo grabbed her hand immediately. Move. He shoved open the SUV door and dragged her into the foam-filled garage. Precious could barely see. Barely breathe. Sirens screamed overhead while footsteps thundered somewhere nearby through the smoke-like foam. Gunshots cracked blindly through the haze. Jinwoo pulled her hard toward the emergency stairwell ahead, then suddenly stumbled. Hard. Precious froze. Blood. His leg. He'd been shot. Jinwoo caught himself against the wall instantly, jaw tight with pain, but still raised his weapon toward the foam behind them. Go, he ordered sharply. Precious stared at him in horror. What? Run. Another shadow moved fast through the foam behind him. One of the attackers. Gun raised. Closing in on Jinwoo's blind side. There wasn't enough time. Precious didn't think. She moved. A heavy fire extinguisher hung beside the stairwell door. She grabbed it instinctively with both hands and swung with every ounce of terrified strength she had. The metal canister slammed directly into the attacker's knees. The man collapsed instantly with a scream. Jinwoo reacted immediately. One precise gunshot. Silence. The attackers stopped moving. Everything froze. Precious stood there shaking violently, still clutching the extinguisher. Breathing hard. Jinwoo stared at her. Not cold. Not detached. Stunned. Actually stunned. Because she came back. Because she didn't run. Because she saved him. More shouting echoed through the garage. Jinwoo snapped back instantly and grabbed her wrist hard. Move. But something had changed now. Precious felt it immediately. The way he held her hand tighter while pulling her into the stairwell. The way he positioned himself between her and every possible threat despite bleeding heavily. The way his eyes kept finding her face repeatedly while they climbed. Not checking a liability. Protecting someone important. Inside the emergency stairwell, they finally stopped briefly on a concrete landing. Both breathing hard. Both covered in foam residue and blood. Jinwoo leaned heavily against the wall for half a second. Precious moved toward him immediately. You're bleeding badly. He ignored the injury completely. Instead, he looked directly at her. Dark eyes searching her face intensely. You came back. Precious's chest rose unevenly. You would have died. A long silence followed. Then quietly. So quietly she almost didn't hear it. Jinwoo said. Yes. The safe house felt smaller than the penthouse. Not physically. Emotionally. Maybe because now Precious understood exactly how dangerous Jinwoo's world really was. There were no illusions left after the parking garage. No pretending he was just some cold billionaire with security problems. People wanted him dead. And now, by extension, they wanted her dead too. The apartment sat high above the city in another anonymous luxury tower with reinforced doors, armed guards, and blackout curtains that stayed permanently closed. 3 days had passed since the ambush. Jinwoo's gunshot wound was healing slowly. He refused proper rest. Of course he did. Precious sat quietly at the kitchen counter late one evening reading, while one of the guards argued softly with another near the elevator. Something about route changes. Security rotations. More threats. The atmosphere had grown heavier since the garage attack. Tenser. Jinwoo stood near the window speaking into his phone in Korean again, voice low and sharp while blood-stained bandages wrapped tightly around his thigh beneath dark sweatpants. Even injured, he somehow still looked dangerous. Precious tried focusing on her book. She couldn't. Not after what happened earlier. One of the guards had returned from surveillance near her old apartment. Park's men were there, watching, asking questions about her. The realization hollowed her stomach out completely. Her old life was gone now. Library shifts, coffee runs, quiet routines. Gone. Jinwoo ended the call abruptly. What about the cousin? One of the guards answered carefully. She's being monitored but untouched. For now, another muttered. Precious felt sick. Jinwoo's expression darkened instantly. Double security around her. She doesn't even know what's happening, Precious whispered. Nobody answered her. Because nobody could deny it. The room filled with tense silence again. Then suddenly, the elevator guard stepped away to answer a phone call. The elevator doors remained partially open. Unwatched. For the first time in days. Precious noticed immediately. So did nobody else. Her heartbeat sped up. Freedom. Right there. No locked exit. No armed man blocking the path. Just a straight ride downstairs. If she left now, she could disappear. Run. Hide. Maybe somehow rebuild what remained of her life. The opportunity sat directly in front of her. Open. Real. Precious slowly lowered her book. Nobody noticed. Jinwoo continued issuing cold instructions near the windows. One step. That's all it would take. One step toward the elevator. Her chest tightened painfully. Because she wanted to leave. God, she wanted to. This world terrified her. The violence. The fear. The constant feeling of danger wrapped around every second near him. Another small step. The elevator remained open. Waiting. Precious looked toward Jinwoo instinctively. He stood with his back partially toward her, shoulders tense beneath his black shirt while speaking quietly into the phone. And suddenly, he didn't look powerful anymore. He looked alone. Painfully alone. Like a man permanently preparing for abandonment. The realization hit harder than expected. Everyone in his life probably did leave eventually. Or die. Or betray him. Maybe that was why he held himself so tightly together all the time. Maybe losing people had become inevitable to him. Precious's throat tightened unexpectedly. Her eyes drifted back toward the open elevator. Freedom. Then back toward him. Jinwoo finally ended the call. The room fell silent. One of the guards started walking back toward the elevator. If she was going to leave, it had to be now. Precious stared at the open doors for 3 long seconds. Then quietly, she turned away from them and walked into the kitchen instead. One guard looked confused. Another noticed immediately. Jinwoo turned slightly at the sound of movement. Precious grabbed a glass from the counter calmly despite her shaking hands and filled it with water. Trying to breathe normally. Trying not to think too hard about the decision she'd just made. The elevator doors slid shut again behind her. Opportunity gone. Silence settled heavily through the apartment. Then slowly, Jinwoo looked at her fully. Really looked at her. And understood instantly. His expression didn't change much. But she saw it. That tiny fracture beneath the surface. Shock. He crossed the room toward her quietly. No anger. No commands. No cold distance. Just silence. Precious held the glass tightly while he stopped directly in front of her. Too close. Her pulse quickened automatically. Jinwoo looked toward the now-closed elevator briefly. Then back at her face. You could have left. His voice sounded lower than usual. Rougher somehow. Precious tried shrugging casually. It didn't seem smart. That is not why you stayed. The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. Because he was right. She didn't fully understand why she stayed. Only that leaving suddenly felt worse. Jinwoo studied her face quietly for several long seconds. No walls. No coldness. Just raw observation. Then slowly, carefully, he lifted one hand toward her face. Precious stopped breathing. His fingers brushed gently against one loose braid near her cheek. The touch was unbelievably soft for someone capable of such violence. Almost hesitant. Like he wasn't used to touching people gently anymore. You should have taken the chance, he said quietly. But the words sounded conflicted. Not like he truly wanted her gone. Precious's voice came out softer than intended. Would you have let me? A pause. Long. Heavy. Then honestly. No. Something vulnerable cracked between them instantly after that answer. Not romance. Something deeper. Trust beginning in the middle of fear. Jinwoo's hand lingered against her cheek 1 second longer before slowly falling away again. His eyes never left hers. And for the first time since meeting him, Precious realized he was no longer looking at her like a responsibility. He was looking at her like someone he was terrified to lose. The package arrived at 6:14 p.m. No return address. No note. Just a plain black box delivered directly to the safe house elevator by a courier who disappeared before security could stop him. Every guard in the apartment went tense immediately. Jinwoo stood near the dining table while one of his men carefully opened it using gloves. Precious watched from across the room, unease already tightening her chest. Inside the box sat a single photograph. Vanessa, bound to a chair, crying. A fresh bruise darkened one side of her face. Precious stopped breathing. No. Beneath the photo rested a small gold lighter engraved with Han Seo-jin's initials. A message. A threat. The room turned deadly silent. One of the guards cursed softly under his breath. Jinwoo's face became terrifyingly still. Not angry. Worse. Controlled. The kind of control that came right before violence. Precious grabbed the photo with shaking hands. Oh my God. On the back, a short sentence had been written in black ink. Trade the weakness. Precious's chest tightened violently. This was her fault. Vanessa had nothing to do with any of this. She was only connected because of her. Jinwoo extended his hand calmly. Give me the photo. Precious looked up sharply. What? You will stay here. No. His eyes hardened instantly. This is no longer negotiable. That's my cousin. And this is my war. Precious laughed bitterly through rising panic. Your war became my war the second people started trying to kill me. Silence. Nobody disagreed. Jinwoo stepped closer. I will bring her back. You don't know that. I do. The confidence in his voice should have reassured her. Instead, it terrified her. Because men like Jinwoo only sounded that certain when they were prepared to destroy everything. Precious looked down at the photograph again. Vanessa's terrified face burned into her chest. No, she whispered. Jinwoo's expression darkened. Precious. You don't get to lock me away again while people I love suffer for this. It is not safe. Nothing is safe anymore. The words cracked through the apartment sharply. The guards avoided looking at either of them. Jinwoo lowered his voice dangerously. If you interfere tonight, you will die. Precious stepped closer anyway. And if I stay here while my cousin dies, what exactly survives? That silenced him. Just briefly. But it was enough. Precious saw the conflict flicker across his face instantly. Not because she was wrong. Because he knew she wasn't. The shipyard smelled like rain, rust, and oil. Massive shipping containers towered beneath harsh industrial lights, while dark ocean water crashed softly somewhere beyond the docks. Cold wind whipped through the abandoned loading yard. Seo-jin stood waiting near the center platform with several armed men surrounding him. Vanessa knelt beside a container nearby, wrists tied, fear written all over her face. Precious's stomach twisted violently seeing her. Jinwoo's convoy stopped hard near the entrance. Doors opened immediately. Armed men stepped out first. Then Jinwoo. Black coat. Dark gloves. Cold eyes. He looked less like a businessman tonight and more like what he truly was. A mafia heir raised in violence. Precious stepped out beside him before anyone could stop her. Jinwoo turned sharply. You were told to stay in the vehicle. And you were told not to underestimate me. Several guards exchanged nervous looks instantly. Nobody spoke to him like that. But tonight, he didn't argue. Seojin noticed her immediately and laughed softly. There she is. His voice echoed through the shipyard. The famous insult. Precious felt old humiliation threaten to rise again. Not tonight. Tonight she was done being ashamed. Seojin spread his arms mockingly. All this destruction over a blind date. You really have become emotional, Jinwoo. Jinwoo's face remained expressionless. Release the girl. Seojin smiled slowly. She matters to her. She matters to you. That makes both of them useful. Precious stepped forward before anyone expected it. Useful. Every gun shifted slightly toward her instantly. But she kept walking. One step, then another, until she stood directly beside Jinwoo instead of behind him. The movement changed the atmosphere immediately. Seojin noticed too. His smile faded slightly. Precious looked directly at him despite her racing heartbeat. You thought I embarrassed him. The wind whipped through her braids while the shipyard remained eerily silent. You picked me because I wasn't your version of beautiful enough, rich enough, acceptable enough. Seojin's expression sharpened carefully now. Precious kept going. You thought sitting beside me would humiliate him. Jinwoo's eyes shifted toward her briefly, watching, listening. And for a while, she admitted quietly, I thought maybe you were right. The silence stretched heavily. Then Precious lifted her chin slightly. But you made one mistake. Seojin's eyes narrowed. Precious's voice became steady. Clear. Powerful. They thought I was your weakness. The entire shipyard seemed to hold its breath. Then Jinwoo spoke beside her. Low. Calm. Certain. No. His eyes locked onto Seojin's directly. They were right. Even Precious looked at him slightly then. Jinwoo's expression never changed. And that is why they lost. The words landed like a death sentence. Seojin's face hardened instantly. Then chaos exploded. Gunfire ripped through the shipyard. Jinwoo's men moved immediately while Precious dropped low beside the loading crates exactly how he taught her. Vanessa screamed nearby. Bullets sparked against steel containers. One of Seojin's men lunged toward Precious. And Jinwoo shot him before the man got close enough to touch her. No hesitation. No mercy. Just pure lethal precision. Because now everyone understood the truth. Precious wasn't standing beside him by accident anymore. She had become the one thing powerful enough to crack open a man who was never supposed to love anyone again. The city looked different after surviving a war. Quieter. Colder somehow. Or maybe Precious had changed too much to see it the same anymore. 3 weeks after the shipyard, Los Angeles finally stopped bleeding. Han Seojin was dead. Most of his organization disappeared overnight beneath the weight of raids, arrests, and internal betrayal. The remaining survivors fled the city entirely. For the first time since the restaurant attack, nobody was actively hunting them. But peace didn't feel peaceful. Not completely. Precious stood barefoot beside the massive penthouse windows late one evening, watching endless streams of headlights crawl through the dark streets below. The same windows that once made her feel trapped. Now they felt strangely familiar. Behind her, the penthouse remained silent. No guards tonight. No shouting through encrypted phones. No blood. Just quiet. Real quiet. She heard Jinwoo approach before she saw him. His footsteps had become recognizable to her now. Measured. Controlled. Dangerous even when calm. He stopped beside her without speaking immediately. For a long moment, both of them simply stared out over the city together. The silence between them had changed too. At first it was tension. Then fear. Now, it felt intimate. Jinwoo finally spoke quietly. Everything is prepared. Precious looked toward him slightly. He wore black slacks and a dark sweater tonight instead of one of his usual tailored suits. The softer clothing somehow made the scar near his collarbone more visible beneath the low light. More human. What's prepared? His eyes remained on the city below. A passport. Precious's stomach tightened slightly. A new identity. He reached into his coat slowly and handed her a thin envelope. A bank account has already been established. Precious stared at it without taking it. Jinwoo's voice stayed calm. You can leave tonight if you want. The words hit harder than expected. You'd let me go? A long silence followed. Then honestly, yes, that single word hurt more than she anticipated, because she understood what it cost him to say it. Jinwoo had spent his entire life controlling outcomes, controlling people, controlling risk. But this was different. This was him loosening his grip willingly. For her. You could live anywhere, he continued quietly. London, Toronto, Seoul, somewhere quiet. His jaw tightened faintly afterward, like each sentence physically hurt to say aloud. No one would know your name. Precious finally took the envelope slowly. Inside sat a passport with another woman's identity printed beneath her photograph. A complete escape. A clean exit from everything. The old Precious would have accepted instantly. The woman from the library. The woman terrified of standing out. The woman who spent years believing she was forgettable. But that woman no longer existed anymore. Jinwoo looked at her carefully now. No coldness. No armor. Just exhaustion and something dangerously vulnerable beneath it. If you stay near me, he said quietly, there will always be risk. Precious's eyes lifted toward his slowly. You think I don't know that by now? You deserve a normal life. A faint sad smile touched her lips. Jinwoo. I got dragged into a Mafia war because your enemies thought I was too embarrassing to sit beside you at dinner. For the first time in days. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Tiny. Real. Then it faded again. This is your last chance to walk away from me. The honesty in his voice shattered something softly inside her chest. Because he meant it. He loved her enough to open the cage door. Even if it destroyed him afterward. Precious looked down at the passport one last time. Then quietly closed the envelope. Jinwoo watched her carefully. Waiting. Not pushing. Not commanding. Just waiting. Slowly, Precious stepped closer to him. Close enough to feel warmth radiating from his body. Close enough to hear his breathing. His eyes searched hers carefully like he still couldn't fully believe someone would willingly stay. Especially after seeing what he truly was. Precious didn't say anything. Words suddenly felt unnecessary. Instead, she reached for his hand. Jinwoo went completely still the second her fingers touched his. Scarred hands. Strong hands. Hands capable of terrible violence. Yet somehow impossibly careful when holding hers. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly, his fingers curled around her hand tightly. Like something precious. Like something temporary he still couldn't believe belonged to him. Precious looked out over the glowing city again while standing beside him. Not behind him. Beside him. The future ahead of them wasn't safe. Or simple. Or clean. There would always be danger attached to loving a man like Kang Jinwoo. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't standing alone in it anymore. And that is where we leave them for now. But Precious and Jinwoo's story is not over. Part 2 is already being written, and it is going to hit even harder than this one. Subscribe right now so you are notified the moment it drops. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who loves a good romance thriller. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. I will see you in part 2.